Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
I'm your co-host, Rich Geer, here. And, Doug, it's good to be back. We've been gone for a month.
I know. It's been a rough trip in some ways, but it's been quite a interesting trip nonetheless.
Yeah, we'll tell our audience what's going on. We just got back we were in London for a few days, but the bulk of the trip, we returned, reprised an earlier trip to South Africa.
Right.
Did a lot of speaking and we did some sightseeing again. But this time we went in a time it was their winter.
Right.
And we didn't really dress all that great. We didn't do bad because during the day, their winters, a lot of people said, when I told people when I came back, did they get cold there? I said, yeah, they're down in the southern part of Africa. And though they don't get as bad as it is here in Michigan, they don't heat their buildings either. So when you're in the Afrikaans and the Transvaal area, basically it gets a little chilly at night. I was living in my hoodie there, Doug, and you caught a bad cold, I think, probably from some of that stuff.
Well,
on the way back.
It didn't hit me until the week that we were about to go home, and that was when we were in Durban.
Durban, and it got rainy and cold and damp.
They had a real big storm that came through, and it was the first snowstorm in 30 years.
But that was in Joburg, Johannesburg, where they got the snow. Durban never gets snow, and they didn't get it this time, but they got a lot of rain, which they don't usually get. And hail, which that is really rare. In other words, it was the coldest winter there, they said, in over 30 years. In fact, they hadn't had any snow since 1981. And Johannesburg got, 4 inches of snow?
Yeah.
And they're all running out, getting all excited about it. And Doug and I are going, oh, we don't want anything to do with it. Go, oh, man. Because when we left Michigan, it was about 104. And it had been very hot for at least 2 weeks in a row. And I guess it stayed pretty hot for a few weeks after that. We come back just in time for the weather to break, and it got it was kind of chilly, and it's been actually pretty nice the last few days. But a lot of rain come on. I'm fighting allergies right now, Doug, because the rain apparently brought all the ragweed to the fore, and so I didn't get the cold. This guy, I really felt bad, and we had some adventures
on the way back on the 11 hours on the plane.
He was miserable. He was just feeling bad. But the thing was, though, Doug, we talk about like highlights on the trip, and we're going to give you a little thumbnail, kind of what we started out and we stayed 3 days in London because we got a good friend that lives there, Dale Welch, and good guy, and we stayed at his place, and it was a couple of days before the Olympics started. Right. So we got in and got out of there before it was really going on. And we didn't really do a whole lot there. We just enjoyed ourselves, really. But we did do one major... Doug wasn't going to let me get away with this, and there's no way, because this is one of his highlights. Now, I enjoyed it, but this guy was totally geeked. He got to go to his home, the origin of his family name on his mother's side. The Satterleys, there's a town called Sotterley. So, Doug, you want to tell us about it?
Well, there's a church on this property. There's a 4,000-acre estate. And there's a church on this property called St. Margaret's Church, and we got a chance to actually go inside. So it dates back to the time of William the Conqueror, so about 1,000 years ago. So it really is a historic church, and the property's got a Georgian mansion on it, which is really beautiful.
It was huge,
and there was sheep grazing in the meadows, and it was just like a little slice of heaven, really. But to be able to go into this church and see your mother's family name throughout it, and you climbed up in the bell tower. And
I had a good time. I went up all the way to the top and was looking down, and they pretty much let us go really almost anywhere we wanted to go. Yeah. And I get a chance to climb up someplace, I'm going to go.
One regret, though, Rich, is that they later said that if I had asked, they would allow me to play the organ.
They had a pipe organ there. He wanted, see, you got to go for it, Doug. Yeah. You have to go for it. He learns next time. But what I liked was interesting there. There was a stained glass window there with Saint Margaret and slaying a dragon. I'd never heard of a legend of everyone's heard of Saint George and the Dragon. At least they've heard about that. They may not know much about it, which quite frankly I don't know as much about it as I would like to know. But this one I knew nothing about. And so Doug looked it up on the web, and I had somebody else at work actually sent me some stuff about there. It's apparently an ubiquitous legend over there about St. Margaret and the Dragon. And,
there's a lot of churches named after it, but it was a legend of that Satan actually visited this lady and swallowed her up, and she escaped because the cross inside that she had around her neck irritated the dragon, and the dragon puked her out, and she conquered the dragon.
Of course, the Pope and those guys have now pretty much relegated her to the legendary thing, kind of like Saint Christopher, I would guess. They've pretty much he's not. I always have a problem with that, not because I dispute the more fantastic elements, but I sometimes wonder if those fantastic elements aren't allegorical into something else that really did happen. Was there a physical creature that looked like a dragon? Was there some kind of a satanic thing, or some kind of something that was going on that was plaguing the, like it could have been a plague, literally a plague, and she prayed against it and turned it away or something. My point is, we don't really know, and there's no way to tell whether it's totally fiction, whether this person was a real person or not. But it is an interesting story.
Nevertheless, they're depicting a dragon.
Yeah, and that's what always is fascinating to us as creationists.
We equate the dragons with the memories of the dinosaurs.
Right. And that's what we think happened. At St. George and the Dragon, same thing as that. Again, because some of the dragons are more mythologized, doesn't mean they aren't based on real memories. What's surprising, Doug, is more often than not, though, they aren't mythologized. And a lot of the reconstructions of dragons are very similar to modern reconstructions of dinosaurs, with sometimes some filaments are coming out of their nostrils. I sometimes wonder if the feathered dinosaurs and some of these filaments, the Chinese dragon especially, some of the stuff would be soft tissue, which we, until recently in some China excavation, we wouldn't have known. We're getting a little bit far afield there.
Yeah, the full-fledged dinosaur, right?
Yeah, but the full-fledged, whatever. But the point of it is it was fascinating. We had a good time there, and Doug was we met some wonderful people, especially the two old characters.
Yeah, Richard and Marianne Lloyd, and her brother is the current resident in the hall. And actually his name is the same name as the fellow who built the hall in 1744, Miles Barn. Miles Barn, yeah. And we were really privileged to be able to go see that place.
So after that, Doug, and we may spend more time in this down the road if we want to talk a little bit more.
Right.
Maybe when we deal with the dragons again and dinosaurs. But we we stayed there for about 3 days. Then we flew out, and what's that about? It's about an 11-hour plane ride from London. It's about a 6-hour ride to London, and about 11-hour, 10 and a half or so to South Africa. We got off there, and we were pretty bushed and pretty tired. We got off in there, and luckily we had a couple days to do some sightseeing and did some neat things. And to me, this was one of the highlights for me. We got to see African elephants up close and personal. We really got to get in there and pet their hide and hold onto their tusks, look at their tail. The tail like a cedar tree, right, Doug?
Yeah. Right.
The elephant tails looks like like a snake or a little rope, and it's about maybe 3 inches and 4 inches in circumference at the top, and it gets to about maybe an inch and a half at the bottom. And then the flanges, the hairs at the bottom of the tail, I was fascinated with. You look at them up close and they're
about a quarter inch thick.
They're about a quarter of an inch in diameter, each filament, and they feel more like plastic broom handle, only 5 times thicker. They didn't feel like hair, but I guess their hair. I said, no fly is going to survive that business. When that tail comes up. But
it's interesting. They lifted up their hind legs so you can touch the bottom of their feet.
Yes, and toes.
And then you could feel the trunk like that, and the eyelashes. Mr. Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street. They got eyelashes kind of like that.
They do. What's really fascinating, my brain is going blank. The oldest son, what's his name?
Jonathan.
Jonathan. It was Jonathan. Okay, and he was the only one on the other, because he had on the other side elephant. There was 2 elephants in this kind of like this round area. Not that big, but he got a big kiss on the side of his face from the trunk.
Oh yeah.
Come on, a nice big muddy But those little things in the end of the trunk are amazing because they pick up. They're very, very sensitive. They're always constantly feeding them. And one thing that I was amazed at, because Doug and I took the opportunity a little bit later than that, it was right after this was all done. They said if you want to ride an elephant, you know, you can ride an elephant. So we paid 450 rand or 400 rand or something. A rand is about, you take 7 or 7.5 rand to make $1.
14 cents.
It's about 14 cents. So it wasn't cheap, but to me it was worth it to get up there. I always was under the delusion you could not ride an African elephant. And obviously it was a delusion. I think I saw some Tarzan documentary when I was a kid, and they talk about elephants not being tractable like Indian elephants, which is true. But you develop more of a relationship. You can't push an African elephant to be a beast of burden like you can an Indian elephant. But you can get them to do certain things, and one of them they would let you do that you can actually ride them. But they're always feeding these guys, and this was an elephant park that really rescued elephants. Ones that had either been abandoned or got wounded or got something, they got separated from the herd for whatever reason, and they would rescue these elephants, and they usually would end up putting them in either probably a zoo for the most part or different places. I don't know whether they ever didn't release too many in the back in the wild. I get the idea that was not as easily done, you know, once they were used to human beings like that. But they could get into certain places, elephant parks and things like that. But I know Doug and I, we got some good film footage of that, Doug riding on the elephant and me riding on the elephant, and I was just flabbergasted. It was just so much fun to go around there. And
that was just a real treat. And, and then you had the opportunity to lead one around. You hold your hand like this.
Oh, that's right, yes.
And grab onto the little lip of the trunk.
That's right.
And they said, don't pinch it.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And you just be very gentle and lead them along, and then he would say, "Well, walk a little bit faster."
Yeah, because he's overtaking you. Yep. So you just keep going, and you put your hand like this, and he'll follow you right around. It was amazing, absolutely fascinating. That was to me a big highlight. The other one, Doug, I liked when we went into the Lion and Rhino Park.
Oh yeah. And
that was a cool thing. We were in a Land Rover, and we're with Anika and her daughter Nika. Okay. And then their son Luke, and Nika was about 3, and Luke was about 8 or 9, I think something like that. And Doug and I are in there, and Anika, she was the wife of Boka Bakma, who brought us over there. Isn't that a good Dutch name? Good Afrikaans name, I guess. You know.
Boka
Bakma, yeah. Boka. Anyway, and that guy was great, but he's a dentist. He was working. She took us to Lion and Rhino Park, and Doug. We got to look around, saw leopards and all kinds of cool things. But we got in the Land Rover, and it was very amazing. We come in. Doug, you were on the driver's side, or the passenger side, which is the opposite of an America. It's more like England. So the driver's on the right side, right front. Doug's on the left, and I'm on the right side. And dumb me, I got the window half open. We're looking back, and there's this magnificent specimen of an African lion. It's almost like the circle of life. I mean, he's just like up there like this, just he's looking out there, and he's roaring to some other things on the other part there. There's a bunch of lionesses up there, and we're looking back, and we drove in about 20 feet, okay, or maybe 30 feet, whatever. We're looking back at him, and a female lioness either broke away or we didn't. She came around the other side, and I'm looking back. Suddenly, I noticed down right below me, there's this lioness right outside the window of the vehicle. And her haunches, I don't think were much more than a foot below, and her head not much more than about 4 or 5 inches below the bottom of the window of the Land Rover. And I'm kind of moving back a little bit like this because, I mean, that window was half open. That paw, if it would have come up. But she kind of moseyed right on by. But I could have stuck my hand out and petted her. That's how close she was. Yeah. And it was freaky, I'm telling you. No, we're not going to do that, Doug. What happened when we were there in 2005, the day before we saw a lion kill? They had another lion kill. You want to talk about that one? Remember that one? About the Chinese gal and her daughter?
Chinese ladies get out to pet the nice kitties.
Yeah, that's exactly. And they became chow. They became kitty chow, and they got eaten. Yeah. And that was a big scandal. I found out that somebody was talking about that when we were there this time. They talked about that. It was a big scandal. But what are you going to do? It's like people today who go out and feed the bears, these grizzlies out in these parks. What are you, nuts? Well, I found out, well, stupidity is not reserved for America. You know, Asia has their fair share of it too. And I guess we're all human, Doug. So there's always going to be some. But they paid with it with their life. They got eaten. So, but we didn't get eaten. Luckily, we're still here to tell a tale. But what a great time that just those couple things there. We saw other things too, Doug.
Well, in that same park, there was another enclosure that we went into where we saw the wild dog.
Yes, we did.
Of course, the last time we were there, they gave us the story that we were lucky to see the impalas.
Impala, yeah.
Yeah, and they, of course, were really abundant.
After the fourth herd of it, Doug and I are looking at each other. We've been busted. And of course, Goose, he was just laughing. He was trying to keep it in. And then they come up. We saw a wild dog in Kruger National Park. Go, no, that's rare. And well, Doug and I were going, what? Dogs? What's the big deal? Turns out they are rare there. They do look different. They got a bigger ear, and we don't really have a great.
Sort of like a calico coat.
Yeah. They are. There's, what did you say? About 400 of them. You said.
Yeah, in Kruger Park.
In Kruger Park. There's not very many of them, but so that it turned out that he wasn't scamming us. But then after the Impala, we had a little bit of took everything Coos said in like with tongue in cheek, but. We had a good time too. Spent a few days at his place too. Yeah, a couple days at his place. That was
in terms
great.
of the meetings, Rich. I think that one of the things that you and I both observed is that the knowledge of creationism there seems to be a little bit on the upswing. In other words, people were a little bit more informed than when we were there before.
Right. Well, we were there first time, except for Henny Moten and Coos really, and the people that were in that what's the name of the
Denel Dynamics was the name of the defense company.
And they had a certain group there, but outside of that, and then Joshua Gilbert over in Durban. But these are like really lone voices in a wilderness almost. Right. The pastors, the churches were fairly, I would say, totally ignorant of the concept. Yeah. But to their credit, they were open.
Right.
When we came there this time, I must have had at least 10 different people ask me about, have I seen the Kent Hovind video? And there's something went over there and it went viral. I must have gone viral in that, at least that circle. Just a lot of the churches were much more informed on things, you know?
Well, the one thing I think that is made a very big impression on me was our visit to Sterkfontein Caves.
Again, yeah, we did there in 2005, and this time again, talk about that, because they really upgraded it quite a bit.
Yeah, the visitor center there, of course, they're presenting the standard evolutionary line, yes. And you can see the wall of from black to white, you know, in terms of the evolutionary sequence from Australopithecines to modern humans. But the problem, of course, is that these two Australopithecines that were found at Sterkfontein were it's sort of like having two frames out of a 100,000 frame movie. Where you're trying to build what the plot of the movie is based upon the two still pictures.
But those two frames, saying all that, they are quite revealing in a sense that's favorable, I believe, to creation worldview rather than evolutionary worldview.
Well, it's very easy to now show that the Australopithecines are not on the pathway to becoming
which
human.
They themselves actually acknowledge. The restoration there, they show their feet. They have the big, opposable toe type thing. They're actually more arboreal than modern chimpanzees. Right. The Australopithecines. So what they've done, and this is interesting, at Sterkfontein, didn't you find that? I found this fascinating. On the one label, they're talking about evolution, like Lubenow. Mm-hmm. It talks about it's a bunch of bushes. But yet when they show the skulls, they still do the linear progression.
Right.
That's a tough icon to break. It's so evocative and so persuasive, but it's a lie. It's wrong based on what they've just said in another label. They say, no, we don't have this nice little tree that goes up. It's more like a bunch of little bushes.
Well, the Littlefoot fossil really is actually a treasure for creationists.
It really is.
And what it is, they're still excavating it. They haven't totally dug out the
Right.
entire fossil, but they found that the foot of the fossil, this is the only
What it's called?
Australopithecine fossil with that shows the hands and the feet. And because it shows it different than what is displayed in the current museums, such as at Michigan State University or at the
Chicago
St. Louis,
Field Museum. St.
they
Louis Zoo.
put human feet on those fossils because they took it from the Laetoli footprints.
Yeah, they took the Laetoli footprints, which are supposedly the same age as Lucy.
Yeah.
Okay, what is it? 3.5 million years ago? Is that when it's supposed to be, or
Right.
somewhere around that particular period of time? And that's exactly. And now you say, wait a minute, we have Laetoli footprints, fully human, albeit a little smaller than, let's say, a standard size foot. As we would, they were slightly smaller. But the point of it is, they don't fit the Australopithecines.
Right.
So now they're a bush. They're not in a direct line to human beings now. But when they show the skulls, they line them right up like they are on the line. That's what really
And so,
got me.
from our standpoint, if we interpret these fossils correctly from the way that they're actually found and depicted, we can use them as examples of how it really fits the biblical model.
Yes.
That Australopithecine, they're not cavemen, because although they were found in the cave, they fell down through a hole in the ceiling.
Yeah, there's a bunch of holes. Boom! They died. They didn't live there. You know.
Right.
I got a whole thing, Doug. We'll do that sometime about who are the cavemen. We had I had some
Right.
fun with the because that's one thing we really had a lot of fun with the presentations. We just, I mean, we went to Durban. We were first in Pretoria and Johannesburg. Well, then we had the 2 hour. We went to Durban and got right off the plane. We got off the plane, boom, immediately to a meeting. We didn't get any time of rest, no rest for the weary. I think we spoke about 8 places in about 4 days. And we had a lot of things, really had a good time. A highlight too, Doug, was when we were in Johannesburg, before we went to Durban, the International Creation Conference over there in Johannesburg.
Right, yeah.
And that was very, there were some good presentations there. Henny's was really good. I liked what he did. He did a good job,
And we'll probably be able to show some clips of that on some of our TV shows.
We will. We'll be going back on some of that stuff and show some of the presentations we had to deal. We all had different kinds of presentations that we were coming up with, but it was
Well, I had a little fun with my presentation, because what I did was I had a few Gidung things to give away.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was the showman on this one. He come out there. Who wants a hat? And, now me, I probably would have tossed it out to say who catches it, But yeah, I gave us a couple of T-shirts away and a few hats. And, and people were getting had a good time.
Then I had fun. I was talking about the geology of Michigan, and I told about the clock that I brought for Bauka.
Oh yeah, we said rocks are not clocks. So he gives away he gives it to
Petoskey stone.
Petoskey stone that's a clock in the middle of it. It says,
And then what I did was I had actually I brought with me a Petoskey stone, and I asked for a volunteer, and this lady comes up, and so I give her the Petoskey stone. I tell her that if you meet a geologist from South Africa, tell him that you found it.
Dig it under, bury it, and then dig it up under things. I found a Petoskey stone revolutionizes. I know.
South Africa and Michigan were once joined.
By the way, it's a funny thing. We dug. I have heard this, especially with some of the fossilized human stuff. They actually, when you get something that doesn't fit the way they like it to fit, we call them OOP arts, out of place artifacts, which includes human stuff. They'll say, well, it was an intrusion. It was buried there. A guy or something. It's not really accurate. Because it doesn't fit their time frame on that. But so those are some things. So Doug, of the meetings, what was your favorite meeting? We only got a couple minutes left. Was there any particular thing that was more interesting than others?
One meeting that we had at the Bible Training College, the very first
that was really good. Yes.
And there was a lot of mixed race people in this college, And I thought that was very interesting because you had an integrated class.
Well-
And we did touch a little bit about, apartheid, the racism issue,
Yeah.
and a few of those other things. But I also did like it when I was able to present my Tale of the Snail.
I like that. I love your Tale of the Snail. That's a good. Well, we don't have time to go into it right now, but we'll do that in a future show because I think
Here's
that's
a quick
really good.
nutshell. Okay, the quick nutshell is that
How about
the
snail
races between you making proteins at the rate of 400 tons a second, and the snail who travels at an inch in a million years, carrying the entire Earth.
Yep.
One molecule at a time, back and forth to the other side of the universe.
Yeah.
And the snail wins the race, and the universe fills up with proteins that
That are
are
worthless.
unusable.
Yeah.
And so that's an illustration that I use quite a bit, which is I think helpful to understand the probabilities of forming life.
Well, that's why people like Carl Sagan and others have gone to outer space aliens because they realize what you're saying is true. So
Well, that even blows that theory.
we know it does, but it doesn't work no matter how you do it. But but we had a great time, and like I say, we'll talk more about some of the stuff that goes on there. But that's sort of an overview of some of the stuff we went in there.
We had plenty of things to talk about, plenty of people to
Spoken
to
about
see.
what 17, 18 places in about 12 days or something like that. 13, however long we were actually in South Africa.
We were busy.
We were
beavers,
busy.
yeah.
Yep.
Well,
So-
we hope you enjoyed our little trip to South Africa, and we'll
In
see
England.
you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.